This is the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast with Mike Reilly. Today we get a temperature check on the Cleveland real estate market from Mike Ferrante, discuss the benefits of multifamily homes, and more. Stay tuned. But first, a word from our sponsor.
If you've been listening to this podcast, then you understand or should understand the pitfalls of investing in Cleveland real estate. Say you're looking for an investment property to rent, and these are the things that could happen and often do. You overpay for a house, and it's in the ghetto. Then you find that it's a money pit with endless surprise repairs. Your hapless property manager, who may be the brother-in-law of the realtor, gets a tenant who after 3 months stops paying the rent. Then the toilet explodes, and you have nobody to repair it because, guess what? The property manager is not answering the phone. Yep, that's the ugly side of the Cleveland real estate market. But we have a solution. Buy one of our properties. It's been inspected. It's been vetted. It's in a rock-solid part of town. It comes with a Gold Star tenant paying top dollar rent, and we manage it. Call us at 216-371-8160 if you're interested.
Hi, everybody. This is our mid-December podcast with my Sunday morning. Nice, bright, sunny day here in Cleveland in the 40s. Going to be topping 50. The leaves are all pretty much down. So, Mike, how are you doing Sunday morning?
Fantastic, Mr. Reilly. Already had my cappuccino and breakfast, and I'm ready to face the day. So
what did you have for breakfast?
Well,
why don't you really bore our listeners and tell us what you had for breakfast?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is actually pretty exciting. Anyone who follows me knows that we're almost vegan. We eat a little bit of eggs in our house. So I had these almond flour pancakes that my wife made this morning and some Morningstar bacon, which is nothing like real bacon.
Yeah, it's like cardboard, right?
After you haven't had bacon in a while, it's not terrible, but I'm sure if I gave you a piece of it, you'd probably say, what the heck is this?
Yeah, well, anybody looking at your, your profile, go to the Mike Ferrante Century 21 profile. Man, you've got that coffee there. You've got that kind of cool Ari Melber, the beat, beard, semi-beard look. Very, very New York-y. So, anyways, all right. Well, let's not bore our listeners here. We're going to lead off with heat check, Mike. Mid-December heat check in the Cleveland real estate market. So, talk to me.
Well, despite the temperatures dropping, still very much a seller's market. We just had. I was working with a buyer, which I do occasionally, and in the really hot markets like Solon, for example, things are still insane. There was a house that hit the market 2 days ago. 3 days ago. I scheduled a showing on day number 2. And you know how you hear me talking about sometimes day 2 is too late. Well, in this case, day 2 was too late. I had a notification that my showing was canceled because they took an offer on day 1. And, that's what's going on, especially in these hot markets. Now, it's another conversation to talk about, did that seller and that listing agent do the right thing by taking an offer on day 1? And of course, I don't know all the behind the scenes type stuff. But while things are slowing down a little bit in the really hot markets, Beechwood, Pepper Pike, Westlake, Independence, 1, 2, 3 days, that's all you get, and the house is gone.
Well, I'm sure our LA investors are just yawning now. Between
hearing
about what we eat, my health, and now this hot market, they're like, okay, tell me something I don't know. But we had that, we were about to put an offer in. Well, we did put an offer in for this house in Pepper Pike, which sat there for the unheard of time of what, almost 2 months?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it was more than that. It was about 3 months. And they did a price drop. And wouldn't you know it, we throw our offer in. Oh, yeah, I already took an offer yesterday.
Okay, we'll give our listeners a little background on why they had to keep dropping the price.
Well, it's the same old story that we tell, Mike. Sellers have kind of adjusted to the market, and regardless of what the market has done, sellers always want to overprice their properties. And I say always, that's not 100% of the time, but it's that whole thing that if you're at all a psychology buff, you know of something called the endowment effect. Things have a value, but when they're yours to you, they have more value. Everybody's baby's cute, right? So in this case, we have a listing agent who bended to the will of the seller, grossly overpriced this listing. 2 price reductions later, they finally get under the threshold they should have been from the start. And that's when things started heating up on the listing. And that's the wrong way to do it.
Okay, but listeners need to understand one important thing about this listing. Yeah, it was grossly overpriced because there was bowing in the walls in the basement, right?
Yeah, and going back to the California listeners, they're like, basements, what are those? But yeah, here in Ohio, we have basements under below grade finished space or unfinished space. And yes, Mike, the block walls were actually pushing inward with long horizontal cracks down, 3 of the 4 walls, which, the house isn't going to fall over tomorrow, but this is a serious structural issue that needed to be addressed. And not every buyer wants to deal with that.
Right. Well, weren't they under contract and then somebody came in with an inspection?
I'm sure that's what happened. Yeah. There was an offer 2 months ago. It fell through undoubtedly due to inspections. And then they finally got the price down to where it needed to be given the defects, and they're under contract again. But we'll see. Does that go through? And, this is the value of putting in a backup offer, which we did.
We put a backup offer in. We were going to take it as is. Now we're rolling the dice here, or as they say in blackjack, maybe I'm saying this the right. We're splitting tens, and we're the dealer has 5, and we're splitting tens. And my thinking is that they're going to get the inspection. The inspection is going to come back, and they're going to say, well, you need to put 50,000 or 60,000 into the basement to rebuild or something like that. And the buyer may balk, and then they're going to maybe turn to us. But we will see, and we will update everybody on not just heat check, but going down memory lane, whatever we need to invent a word for this. But so, next week, right before Christmas, we'll say, hey, was our offer accepted? I understand from your assistant that they put in the buyer put in an offer over asking. That's what I heard.
Oh, I did not hear that. But yeah, sometimes that's what happens. And that's the state of the market, a price adjustment. Sellers sometimes say, well, I don't want to keep lowering my price. Can't we just wait? And they could have waited and waited. But here in this case, the price adjustment did elicit a good offer. In fact, somebody felt they adjusted it so much that they went over list price.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing our strategy with this house is there's a couple factors in, and I think listeners would enjoy hearing this part. We saw the bowed walls, but we have experience dealing with that, bracketing them up. I mean, we have a Delio's group. We have, David Singh's crew that could come in there and fix it up. And we were just looking to Airbnb this, and we would have owned that very hot geographic market for Airbnb. So at the price we were offering, even though, we've got some issues with the basement, we thought just to start, it was pretty much move-in ready Airbnb, but it came with 0.18 acres, right?
I think it was just over an acre.
And so it goes way back, and there's a creek way in the back. And I thought to myself, hey, you know what? Down the road, this could be a possible teardown or a subdivide or, something. So anyways, it was worth making the offer, and we'll just see if it plays out. So, but we did get another house, and that's that 3416 house. Mike, comments?
Yeah, duplex. This is a great story. We talk about this all the time with beginning investors, especially younger folks who are wanting to get in the investor game. Buy a multifamily house, live in one unit, rent the other one out, whether it's long-term or Airbnb it. I love the Airbnb idea because you're there to manage it. And, you're basically getting off on the path of investing while someone else is paying all or most of your monthly housing expense. And this is a good one, Mike. This multifamily in the Heights area, you couldn't ask for a better both long-term rental and Airbnb location. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool property. Needs some work, but it's cool.
Oh, it needs a lot of work. And, the interesting thing about it is they accepted our offer at 145 as is. We're estimating we're going to put 100 in. And we've got some interesting decisions to make. But before we get deep into that, what was interesting about this house was its location. Because earlier podcasts, we had talked about micro-targeting. This is a classic micro-target because it is on the other side of, if listeners want to go to their Google Maps, hit pause. This house is close to the corner of East Scarborough and South Taylor, zip code 44118. And it's about 4 houses from that corner, which is interesting. On the other side of South Taylor is what's called the Royal Heights, a super white hot area in Cleveland Heights. It's on the border of University Heights and Shaker Heights. It encompasses 4 or 5 streets: Queenston, Kingston, Princeton, Canterbury. And those 4 streets are probably the hottest areas in Cleveland Heights, short of maybe Fairmont Cedar. So we are just on the other side of that. So we're going to enjoy the price appreciation when the house is fixed up, being so close to the Royal Heights. The location is fantastic. Right now, we already got a tenant in there, inheriting the tenant. And I did a little sniff check on this guy, and he's harmless. A little bit of a computer nerd, early 60s, bachelor, very quiet, no mental health problems. And he's paying $1,000 a month. So Travis and his soon-to-be husband, Michael, who you heard on an earlier podcast, they're going to be living on the 2nd and 3rd floor. But their bedroom, I think, should be on the 3rd floor. But this is where we're starting to, let me get into the weeds, everybody, about the contracting side. How do you fix it up? And the 3rd floor has no heat, but it's got 4 bedrooms, 4 big rooms up there, 3, 4, I forget. So now the question is, what do you do for that 3rd floor? Because if you can make that into a spectacular master suite, you've got it quiet. You've got 2 big skylights facing south up there. And we're experimenting with options in terms of how to bring the heat and the AC in. What's your thoughts, Mike, on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something unique that we have here are these 3rd floors. And, I've seen different owners use them in different ways. I personally like, if you're an owner occupant, turning that into a master. That's what I did in my first duplex. We like to relay our own personal stories here, and that's exactly what I did. I lived in my duplex for a long time, and that 3rd floor was a master suite. It also turns into a really interesting option when you eventually move out of that property because, hey, we don't want to live in our duplex forever. We want to get a nice single family home or condo or whatever. And if you decide to go the Airbnb route, this becomes a whole separate unit that you could almost rent out. And then, or even for the long-term rental, my duplex, my finished 3rd floor is now incorporated into the 2nd floor. And I get a really good rent for that as a 3-bedroom, almost as much as single family homes are fetching.
Right. I'm leaning towards putting the money in, putting another bathroom up on the 3rd floor.
Oh, huge. 2nd bath is huge, Mike. Absolutely. I couldn't in mine.
Yeah. So we have, when it's fixed up, we have 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor with a complete bathtub, shower. And then on the 3rd floor, you have another shower, bath, and you've got 3 rooms. So you've got 3 bedrooms up there. So now you have a 5 and 2 on the 2nd and 3rd, which, 3-4 years down the road, if these guys want to move to like a conventional 3-bedroom house, another fixer-upper, they've got a spectacular Airbnb setup. And their monthly payment, we estimate with taxes and insurance, and we did the numbers on this earlier podcast, is going to be roughly around $1,600. They're already paying $1,100 on a rent side. When they buy it from us fixed up, their mortgage is going to be $1,600, and the guy on the first floor is paying $1,000. And once he moves out, they can go down and fix up the first floor, furnish it up, and now they can make $2,000 a month.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things about Cleveland, and that's why investors are flocking here, is that the rent to sale price ratios are still a bit out of whack. Now, things are starting to even out, but what I mean by that is that it is still considerably less expensive to own a home and make your house payment than it is to rent. You're paying a premium if you're renting. Now, that said, people rent for different reasons, and when the furnace breaks, when the roof leaks, that's on the landlord, not on the renter. And, there are many reasons people rent. Maybe they're only going to be here for a year or two.
Right.
Maybe they are working on their credit. But anyway, still in the Cleveland market, it is a true fact that it is cheaper to own than it is to rent.
Right. And when you throw in the whole short-term rental, either short-term can encompass a couple different options. One would be a pure Airbnb where it's furnished, and there you've got almost like a mini hotel. And then you've got a 6-month short-term unfurnished, where people, they're only going to be there for 6 months. Maybe they're looking to buy a house, maybe they're just doing a fellowship or whatever, and they may move some of the furniture in themselves. But what's interesting about both is nobody seems to be doing that in Cleveland, in the Cleveland market. They're locked into that conventional 1-year unfurnished lease, period. And when I'm talking to investors who are contacting me, when they think about Airbnb, and again, we're kind of repeating ourselves from earlier podcasts, so listeners can go listen to that in detail. But people keep thinking Airbnb in Cleveland is vacation rental. It's not vacation. It's called short term. There is a huge complex market of people whose needs require them to just be here short term, whether it's going to the clinic for a couple months, they need something on the first floor, then they don't want to stay at a hotel, they had a fire, they're moving in here just for like a 3 or 4 month fellowship and they don't want to stay in a hotel. There's all sorts of reasons why people want to rent short term. And right now in our little niche of Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights, close to the clinic in University Circle, we're doing real well with that. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So, Mike, when I hear that, just to play, not necessarily devil's advocate here, but just to ask the question that I think may be on some people's minds, people who are more geared toward the traditional rental, when I hear that, they might say, oh, well, gosh, that's pretty labor intensive to manage that process. Instead of renting the place out once a year or once every 2 years, you have to rent it out several times in a year. How do you cope with that challenge? How do you manage that process of renting it, and then a month later renting it again, a week later renting it again, 3 months later renting it again? How do you cope with that?
Well, I mean, our infrastructure on the Reilly painting and contracting side allows us. I mean, we have people doing this full time, so it's almost like our 20 homes that we currently own, after selling off 6 this year, they're all, for the most part, I think 16 out of 20 are Airbnb. So there is economies of scale. I mean, we're able to manage that. And we do have a couple clients who we have allowed them to convert their house into Airbnb. And I want to emphasize the word allow, because we are very picky in terms of who we take on as a client. Very picky. In fact, I'm trying to walk a fine line without sounding like a dick, on the phone, talking to people who are looking for property managers. Again, I'm repeating myself. We've done this on other podcasts, but there is work that you need to do. But then I want you to think about what I've seen when we've had 1-year leases for tenants. It's unbelievable how much money you have to spend when they move out.
Yeah, that's right.
It's unbelievable. I mean, you're paying the whole inside now. Yeah. And I mean, at least with the short-term people, the professional people, they're not, first of all, they're hardly there at all. They're just there to crash. They're not beating the house up. And if they are, believe me, they're going to get whacked on their security deposit. But
Yep.
if they're only there for 3 months, how much damage can they do? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Mike, we tell when I talk with investors, I tell them from experience, when you do long-term rentals, be prepared to spend approximately 1 month's rent every time you have turnover on your unit.
Right. 1 month's rent, and then you got to pay 1 month on the commission side.
Yeah, if you're paying someone to rent it out for you, then you're paying a month to commission to those darn pesky realtors or managers.
Yeah.
I say that tongue in cheek, of course.
No, not pesky, incompetent. I want to right. emphasize that. The word is incompetent.
If you have any questions for us or topics you want to discuss or even just want to say hi, you can email us at theclevelandrealestateinvestor@gmail.com.
Frankly, we've been doing this podcast for a year and a half, whatever. And one of the common threads in all of them, I don't know how people are making any money on the rental side. On the 1 year rental. I mean, really, in Cleveland, maybe a 3-bedroom is $1,500, for a property that's $150,000, maybe it's between $1,500, $1,800, something like that. And I don't know how people are making money on that. I think I did a quick notation after paying the 1 month commission and the 1 month rent just to kind of clean it up. Now you've got 10 months of, let's say, $1,500. Let's just say $1,600. Okay, well, that's $16,000, right, on a $150,000 house. Now, if you've been financing it, okay, so what did you make on your ROI? 6%, 7%?
Yeah, that's not uncommon, because our taxes here, that's a comment we always get, even our folks from California say that our taxes rival theirs, or in some cases even exceed. The difference is our prices are lower, but you might have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year in taxes, and then any repairs that you have. And if you're paying any utilities, which, single families, we typically structure it so that the tenants are paying the utilities. But yeah, by the time you rack up all those expenses, that 12% ROI you thought you were getting turns out to be 5 to 7.
Right. And there is my Bible, my top 5 books of all time, Moneyball, Study of Analytics. Moneyball is, I've read that book 3-4 times. Trust me, people, the book is a lot better than the movie, and the movie is great.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about how real estate is like owning a restaurant. I mean, it just sounds so cool when you think about it. Well, I've got real estate. I talked to a young guy the other day, and he's talking, well, I want to build up my real estate portfolio. And I'm kind of listening. And, after I get a couple in Cleveland, maybe, I was thinking maybe getting something in Carolina. And then I just jumped in. I said, stop it. Stop that. And I started calling him Mr. Carolina. You know what? Don't even go there. First of all, you're going to be lucky if you make any money in the Cleveland market, let alone Carolina. And he was a nice guy, nice young guy. But I just said, and maybe he's listening to this, and you know what? He's typical of a lot of people coming in. I mean, the stars in their eyes, like owning a restaurant. But the reality is, if you want to really make money, you've got to be prepared to crunch these numbers like an assassin. Get to, wash the stars out of your eyes. I mean, really look at the numbers and be open to doing it a little differently. And my restaurant model, my wife and I went out last night to this really cool restaurant in the Royal Heights, Gigi's, Fairmont Taylor, right next to the bread store, Gigi's. And we talked to Kate, who came in from Labrador. They brought the husband and wife who own this restaurant, brought her in, and they have made a conscious decision to do a work-family balance. They're not doing brunch on Sunday anymore. I mean, they barely make any money doing brunch. Sounds sexy, but they're not making any money. They're closed on Sundays, right? They're closed on Monday. And I think they were closed on Tuesday too. So they're only open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, right? Yeah. They're 4 nights. They're making more money this year than they did in the past because they're killing it on 4 days. They're packed. And so the wait staff is making what they make in a week, right? So they've got their work-family balance. Now they don't have any problem hiring people because, they say, hey, look, you'll work 4 days and make what you used to make in 6 days in the restaurant business. And I think that kind of mentality has to be applied to real estate. It's like, listen, the short term is like being in a restaurant where you're only open 4 days. And this is what we're doing. And if you've got a good product, and you're not trying to spread yourself out to whoever comes into your restaurant, this is what we serve. We've got a small menu. It's this, and this, and this. And you stick to your knitting and voila, less stress, more money. Right?
Yeah, I love it. Well,
And
Mike,
ahead.
I'm always reminded of one of the first times we ever had a lengthy conversation. It was in your office upstairs there in Cleveland Heights, and you were talking about knowing your numbers. And that's exactly what Moneyball's all about. That's exactly what you were trying to say in that story about the restaurant. I don't know if you remember this story, but we're sitting there talking about, knowing your numbers and what makes you money. What is your most profitable job is what you were asking me. And you said to me, what do you think my most profitable job is? And I'm thinking, well, he does contracting. It's probably the big, as you said, sexy job, the kitchen remodel, the bath remodel, the big $40,000, $50,000, $80,000 job. And you looked at me and said, no, one of my most profitable jobs is gutter cleaning. And I'm like, oh, how can that be? What are you charging? A couple $100 to clean some gutters? He's like, yeah, but we're in and out of there. And by the time you look at the profit margin, that's a profitable job. And if I could do 10 of those, I'll take that over a kitchen or bath any day. I don't know if you remember that, Mike, but that story stuck with me. And it's kind of like the Moneyball thing, knowing your numbers.
Right. And the podcast we're doing is kind of an amalgamation about a lot of things we've been talking about in the year and a half. But it all starts with everybody who's listening to this. I want you to ask yourself a fundamental question. Do I know how to make money? I mean, think about it. Do I know how to make money? And the answer is probably no. You don't know how to make money. You've got a degree. You knew how to get a degree. You have a job, so you knew how to get a job. But this is totally unconnected to those two things. It's like if you're, I don't care what business you're in. Well, I'm on a salary. I work for Amazon. I'm this. Okay, I'm making $75,000, $80,000 a year, but I'm working 3,000 hours. Okay, you're not making any money. $3,000 an hour, 80,000. What's that? That's like I'm making $20 an hour. If you factor in the overtime.
It's amazing. It's amazing when you break it down like that. It's the same thing in our business in real estate. We look at our commission and we say, well, how many hours did we put in on that deal? And then you also have to factor in all the things that you do that make you $0 when you're self-employed. Some of the activities that you're doing are non-income producing.
Right. So, and I think that is what, people that start, they want to have a bread store. Oh, I love baking, so I'm going to have a bread store. Oh, I love going to a restaurant, so I'm going to have a restaurant. You know what? I love fixing up a house, so I'm going to go in real estate. Everything they're doing, every action they're taking is unconnected to the fundamental question. Do you know how much money you're making? What is your goal making money? Or is making money secondary to getting into real estate? And, let me go off on one of my other threads. I had an interesting conversation, last night with a friend of mine at Shaker Country Club. We were talking, and I fell into off the wagon and started talking about college. And he's got 2 kids. One went to Brown, $60,000 a year. And I said to him, is it really worth it? And he go, oh yeah, they're going to make, my son's going to make millions. He's tapped in, he's connected, he's stuff like that. Okay, so what's he doing now? Well, a friend hired him as an assistant investment analysis. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so what does that mean? I mean, why don't you go work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car? I mean, the one, how many people, what are the percentages of people that make that kind of money? It's 1%. 1% make over $400,000 a year. And I'm not saying making money is the be all and end all, but there is this constant stars in your eyes. I'm going to get this degree. I'm going to get this MBA. I'm going to get my real estate license. And who's here to punch my ticket? It doesn't work that way. Okay, I'm going off. But bring me back on the road here, Mike. When I start talking, when I start going on that college rant, then help me, get talk to me. Got to go to a meeting. Go ahead, Mike. Jump in.
Yeah, no. So I mean, to bring it full circle back to real estate, Mike, I'll be honest and share that my first 15 years self-employed, I was a painting contractor. And I did it because I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I knew how to make money. It was a disaster. After 15 years, I essentially had almost nothing to show for that time because I didn't manage my money well. I didn't track it. And even in real estate, I mean, everyone thinks, oh, Mike's got this nice portfolio and sells a lot of real estate. I mean, it took me years before I figured it out. So, I know you didn't ask me this question, but in hindsight, the one thing that I always tell people when they say, well, what advice would you give me? In knowing what I would say, get a mentor, find someone who has done what you want to do and do whatever it takes to study under them. And that kind of circles back to your college conversation. I don't want to get you back on that line of thought, but learning from someone who has done it or knows more than you do, I think is so critical and perhaps even more valuable than the college education.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And, that mentor that you have, I've got a family member who's 8 years sober, 8 years. The mentors they have are just solid gold, because they always start with their own personal failures. So if you want to have a mentor, that mentor has got to share with you how they screwed up, because that's why they're worth listening to. Because they've gotten to a point like you and I, where we've learned from the millions of mistakes that we made.
Yeah.
I keep reminding, I'm 45 plus years in the contracting business, but I remember when I was first started out, talk about just naive. I had this one guy who just worked me down on price, promising there was going to be more work. Yeah, well, if you give me a good price, I got a lot more work for you to do. So I said, all right. And and then of course he kept chiseling away. Once I was there, I probably made less than minimum wage when it was all done. And sure enough, 10 years later, I met this guy again. One of my great stories contracting, but now I'm 10 years. I've seen it. I'm starting to see it all. And when that call came through, he wants to, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm doing this estimate. And I went out there and sure enough, he started trying to play his Jedi mind tricks with price. And I looked at him, I said, listen, you never gave me any work and I lost my shirt. It's $2,000, buddy. That's it. And if you try to work me on price, I'm going up to 2,200. We're going north. We're not going south. If you keep trying to hammer me on price. And you know what? He gave me the job. Because you know why? It wasn't because he was a dick. It just sort of, dawned on me after that. It was because I was willing to cave on price, which brought into question my competency. So he kept thinking, yeah, I'll give you more work. Yeah, I want to see what you're doing. But if I have to end up being the foreman, hey, when are you guys going to get done? Did you get the paint? It's a sunny day. You're not going to quit early and stuff like that. And I was probably worth minimum wage contract for that. So knowing your numbers, and you know what? It's not even knowing your numbers. What you have to do is you have to know your numbers. That's the getting of wisdom, is understanding that, A, wash the stars out of your eyes, and B, start bringing out the legal pad and get the mentor. And only then will you be ready to venture down the road. And final note is, a lot of investors I'm talking to, like that really nice young guy, Mr. Carolina, when I was talking to him, I kept saying, he said, well, I really want to get into, short term. I really want to do, you're not ready for it. You're not ready for it. grasshopper, you're not ready for it.
Talking about getting into different cities, I talk to investors and they say, well, I'm in this city, this city, this city. Keep in mind that each new city is like starting a new business. You have to hire your staff, which in this case, your staff is not really staff, but they're your contractors, your manager, your realtor, your boots on the ground. Do you have an attorney, an accountant? Each state's tax laws might be different. So it's literally like starting a new business in each area that you want to invest in.
Right. And you know what? It boggles my mind when I hear that. When people say, I'm in this city, this city. I said, what are you, an idiot? Why would you want to get in different cities? You got to keep finding a contractor to handle your properties. You got to find a property manager. It's, you know what? And there's 2, 3, 4 different people you've got to assemble on your team. And we've talked about that in earlier podcasts. What? And you got to do that 4 or 5 times because you want to have the glamour of being in different cities? I never could figure that out. Hey, you stay on the same neighborhood, okay, let alone the same street. That way, the landscaper doesn't have to, drive miles. Hey, we can take care of this house. I'm going to go, 2 streets over and he's got another property. Same thing with the lawn, same thing with the snow plow, the whole 9 yards, same thing with the gutter cleaning. I mean, it's like the guy who owns a restaurant, stick to this menu because that's going to make it easier for your cook or your chef to execute. Plus, you'll get economies of scale in terms of the stuff you need to buy. Okay? Let's not have 20 different entrees here.
Right. I wonder, Mike, if there's anyone, I'm sure there are investors who are doing multiple cities and doing it well, or maybe not realizing whether or not they're doing it well. But if they're listening saying, you know what, maybe I'll follow the path of that restaurant and close 3 days of the week. And essentially where I'm getting at is maybe it's time to take a look and see if you're in 5 cities and you're making the most money in 1 or 2 of them. Maybe you take a look at that and say, you know what? Time to liquidate and focus on the areas I'm making the money, kind of like you with gutter cleaning.
Well, let's wrap this back up and put a bow on it because this is more of this podcast is more of a greatest hits podcast.
Right.
Moneyball, know your numbers, mentor, micro targeting. But getting back to Travis and Michael, who are going to be guests on our podcast, and which, by the way, their journey being the first homeowner is all going to be captured on our YouTube segment. So this is going to be fascinating. So 2022 is going to be, hey, we're starting this house. This is our journey. Follow us along. And for anybody who wants to buy their first house and kind of do a twofer where it's not just their first house, but it's also their first investment, with a tenant, we're going to walk them through. But, Travis, my youngest son, art degree from University of Michigan, very well educated, a brilliant artist who's been working in his contracting business since he was 10, washing trucks and cutting grass and, his summer job. And his partner, Michael, who was a music teacher and got his degree, Eastern Michigan, I think, in music. And he was a teacher for 2-3 years and just got burned out. And so he's been working with us. Both of these guys are learning all the nuts and bolts about how to fix up a house. They're going to be a lot of sweat equity we're going to give to them. The painting, getting up on a 20-foot ladder, how to refinish floors, how to do this. They're going to be working with the crew and they're going to get paid, but then we're going to carve out work for them to do. As part of this deal. And I think they're both very excited about learning all the nuts and bolts in terms of home renovation and what to do and what not to do, how to think outside the box on this.
My back hurts just thinking about it, Mike.
Well, okay, but these guys, they're young guys,
right.
20s, so late 20s. So
right. Not 53 like me and slightly older than that for you.
It's going to be a real interesting episode on our YouTube segment coming up is going to be, and I'll end on this note, everybody, is what to do with that 3rd floor. Because there's no heat, there's no AC. Okay, there's no pipes, there's no nothing. It's huge. we're talking 12-foot ceilings up there. I can't believe how big this space is. And, they've got walls and everything. It's not just rafters and stuff, but they're walls and stuff like that. So radiant heat instead of ductwork. Get one of those big exhaust fans, like I have it in my house that just sucks everything out. That's going to be one of the more interesting features of how we stay within our budget and, fix it up and make it, nice for down the road for them to live in, but then later to Airbnb it. So,
yep. Sounds good.
All right. So Mike, all right, let's end. Thanks everybody for listening. Our greatest hits episode, and we'll have something right before the holidays. Have a good day, Mike.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. You can find all our episodes at www.reilly-properties.com, or you can find us on your favorite streaming services like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more.